welcome to Rachel Rossi Design. Today I'm going to show you how to make your very own quilt label. We're going to go through how to design it, how to cut it, sew it, and then put it onto your quilt. If you're looking for the shortened version of that, head on down to the comments below and click on short version. If not, if you want every single detail, just stay right where you are and we will get started on our quilt label. Happy sewing! So what I like to do first is just take a look at the quilt, kind of zoom out. If you don't have a pattern cover that shows you the whole quilt, take a picture, zoom it out so that you can just kind of see some of the design motifs that are going on in there. So we noted a couple things, right? The long strips, the dome shapes, and the upward movement. We won't necessarily use all them, but 3 is a great number to start with when you're just trying to brainstorm ideas for your label. So let's sketch it out. No certain number that you need to use, but I like to incorporate some of the fabrics that I used in the quilt top just to make it cohesive. Typically, I like quilt labels for baby sizes to maybe be about 6 inches. Again, not a rule, but just a preference for me. And I often really like how it looks when the space that I'm writing in is a square. So whatever other designs happen, I like that this stays a square and I can write in here. So since we kind of created almost like a postcard shape, I kind of like it. So let's see what happens if I just add a couple more stripes, keep it super simple. So maybe I'll do something like that. Super easy, 3 strips, you can handle that. You just made a quilt. We'll do 3 different fabrics, maybe a light, medium, and dark, or something with a little variation to it. And then obviously over here is where I'm going to write, and I'll just use a light fabric for that. You can use white. I will probably use this really light gray. It's super cute, and I can use the lines as my space to write. Also, if you were wondering, this fabric is by Dear Stella, and it's called Wide Awake. Super cute. Love all these little panda bears. So cute. Anyway, back to the label. So, since we have a really simple design, I'm kind of liking it. What you want to do is make sure, as you sketch it all out, that you leave enough room to write. And there's 4 important things that you want to write. Number 1 is obviously who the quilt is to. You can do their whole name, nickname, whatever you want to personalize it. The second part is who it's from. If you are married, it is helpful if this is like a family piece to put your maiden name on there. Otherwise, you can just put your first and last name, and if anyone helped you on this quilt, I would definitely suggest also crediting them, especially a long armor. The third thing you're going to want to put on there is your date. Since mine is a baby quilt, I'm going to put his birthday just to kind of commemorate the date. Otherwise, you can just put 2018 or whatever year it is that you're watching this. And lastly, you're going to put your location. This one seems kind of weird, and it's something I haven't started doing until recently, but the more information that's on a quilt label equals more value for your quilt if it's ever appraised, and it just adds a little bit of history to the whole thing. So make sure those 4 things are on your quilt. There's usually a little extra space down here. I often like to do a quote or a Bible verse. A popular one for babies is the Bible verse that says, "For this child I have prayed," and that's what I was originally going to do, but now I'm looking at this little circular panda over here, and it might be really cute to stick him right there. So I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is do light, medium, dark, fussy cut this so that that little sweet panda is here. There's our happy panda. Oh, that's pathetic. And then just do my gray up here, nice and light, with my handwritten details. Okay, so I've just redrawn kind of an empty template so you guys can see how I do my measurements. I want things to end up about 6 inches. I'm not going to go crazy about it. I'm just going to do whatever feels easiest for me. So if the whole thing is about 6 inches long and 6 inches high, I realize I did not draw a square, but that's okay. Let's say we're going to make these 2 rectangles. We'll make them 4 inches wide. That's an easy measurement. And let's make each of these rectangles about let's make them 3/4 of an inch wide. Easy measurement. And then if this is 6, we obviously want these to be 3 by 4. So 3 by 4, 3 by 4, 3/4 by 6. That'll be our finished measurements for each rectangle, but you have to remember to include your seam allowances. Again, if you forget, not the end of the world, no one's measuring this, and no one knows how big you wanted it to be in the first place. So don't freak out. So if we want these to end up at 3/4 of an inch, we are going to need to add a 1/2 inch to your total width to account for your 1/4 inch seam allowance on each side. So we're going to cut 3 strips. Let's make a little list. We're going to cut 3 strips, and each of them is going to be 1 1/4 inch wide by 6 1/2 inches long. That was pretty easy. So we got this part taken care of. Now we just got to get these two. So obviously we're going to need 2 rectangles. We want them to end up 4 inches wide. So we're going to cut them at 4 1/2 inches wide by 3 inches tall. So we're going to cut it at 3 1/2 inches tall. Pretty easy. Let's get cutting. We're ready to cut now. I've just got some scrap pieces of my fabrics. They don't have to be fancy. You'll get them nice and straight before you sew them. So the first thing we're going to work on is our 4 by 3 rectangle for the top. It's not super straight now, and I kind of want to find the straightest line that I can in the print so that my words are nice and straight, because I'm going to use them as my lines for writing on. So I'm just going to kind of get one edge straight that I think looks good, and then we'll go from there. So this is now our straight edge. I haven't done any measuring yet, and we want it to be 3 1/2 inches wide. So we'll line up our 3 1/2 inch mark along that straight edge that we know is straight. Cut it. So we've got the right width now, and now we want to get 4 1/2 inches. So we're going to use this line as a reference because we know it's straight. We're going to get rid of that selvage. See how crookedy that was? And then we're going to turn it and measure at 4 1/2 inches. Get everything nice and lined up and cut. So now we've got the piece that I'm going to write on, and I think that'll be a good size. I think that gives me plenty of room. We'll be good with that, so we'll set that aside for now. Now we've got our 3 strips to work on. I've got them here. They're all kind of cut out in a haphazard way, and I don't really care too much about what, like, fussy cutting or what part I see. So the first thing I want to do is get a straight edge. We've got lots of room because this is a pretty skinny piece that I'm cutting out, so I don't mind cutting off that big edge. Now all 3 of them are nice and straight along there, and we're going to be cutting these out at 1 1/4 inches wide. So we'll line up our 1 1/4 inch and cut. And now we want them to be 6 inches tall. So just very carefully make sure you're not sliding anything around. Use this line as your straight reference and cut. And this is a 6-inch ruler, so I'm going to use the whole width of the, but I don't want 6 inches, I want 6 1/2 inches. So I'm going to have to go to the mat. See what you can see here. Okay, so I'm going to cut at 6 1/2 inches. It's easy to forget when you get those numbers in your head. So make sure you always refer back to your list. And now we've got our 3 little strips that we're going to do. And I was looking at originally this little circle. I thought that was cute, but I don't know, it says cuddles. I don't know, it's just not quite right. So what I do love though is this little guy peeking at the moon with his little mouse friend. So I'm going to go ahead and measure it. From top to bottom, 1, 2, 3, it's like exactly 3 inches. So what I'm going to do is cut it generously, and then I'm going to probably take a little bit away from my writing area so that I can just have a little bit of breathing room around him. We'll see when we get there, but this is all very, you know, whatever. So what I'm going to do is just cut out kind of generously around this little guy, just to get the extra fabric out of my way. design is going to look something like this. And don't worry when it doesn't line up perfectly, because we have all those seam allowances to account for. So these pieces are going to look shorter, but that's okay. But it'll look something like this. So let's start sewing. We're going to start on these 3 little strips. So you're just going to put them right sides together. Match your edges and just use a scant quarter-inch seam. Alright, we are all ironed. So now what we need to do is just put our 2 last pieces together, and then we'll trim them up so that they look nice. You're going to remember that we're going to have a little extra up top. That's okay. Don't flip out. No problem. We're just going to put right sides together, and we're going to even out that bottom piece. Doesn't have to be perfect. We'll now to finish this off, we're going to trim it down. Again, no one knows how big you wanted this to be, so there's not really any rules here. You can see I've got like a little stair-step deal going on both of these ends. Not a big deal. So just find a straight line. I'm going to use this as my straight line here, this seam right here, just because it's dark and people will see that the most. Line up against it as close as you can to this edge without cutting any major stuff off. And just trim up that edge a little bit. So now we know this is our straight edge. We know that this is already straight. We'll check it at the end. So let's trim up this edge. Since we know this edge is straight, we'll use that as our guideline. Trim. And now we can, all 3 of our sides are straight here. So we'll go ahead and trim the last side. So we're nice and straight here. So now that it's all trimmed, we are going to just cut out a piece of fabric to be the exact same size as this. It doesn't matter what this fabric is, if it matches or anything like that, no one will ever see it. This is actually going to be on the back of our label. So just cut out something to be the same size, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so now that we have that part done, we're going to put this right side up. And I'm actually going to do the wrong side of this just because it's a little bit lighter and I don't want to show through the back. So I will actually do right side up and wrong side together. And we are going to sew all the way around here. And then I will show you what to do next. Okay, so as you can see, I have sewn along all 4 corners, all 4 edges, I should say, over here. So this whole thing is sewn in. So you're probably thinking, what in the world? So what you're going to do is separate the 2 layers that you had. You're just going to make a tiny little hole in the back layer. Make sure it's not your front layer that you just worked so hard on. Just make a tiny little hole and then make a slit. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be centered. And before you turn it right side out, just clip those little corners off. It'll give you a nice crisp corner when you're all finished. Alright, so now we can go ahead and turn it right side out. suggest always tracing this, making sure all your words fit before you go for it. All you need here is a micron pen. Let's see, micron, I like the 0.8 or 0.5, any smaller and it gets stuck on your fabric. So this is a good size. Again, you can use a Sharpie marker. I like to start in the middle so that I'm sure things are fairly well centered. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's handwritten. So I'm gonna start with who it was quilted by, close to the center, and go from there. So once your label is ready and ironed and written on, you just simply place it in the bottom. I like to do the bottom left-hand corner of my quilt. You can do wherever you'd like though. Some people like to center it. It just depends on what you like. And then I just pin it in place. You can also use Elmer's glue to kind of keep it in place without poking yourself. And then you're just going to use a hand sewing needle. I like to double my thread and just put a little knot at the end. Let's see if you can see it. Just a little knot, doesn't have to be pretty. And I just tuck it up under the back so no one's gonna see it. Come out the side. It's a bad place to start. Let's start on the side. Come out the side, no one's gonna see your yucky little knot. And then you're just gonna hand sew through that, right through where that fold is to keep it in place. You just do that all the way around. Make a little knot to lock it all down. And you've got yourself a quilt label. I hope you've enjoyed this post today, and I will be doing more posts in the future on hand sewing, on labels, and all other sorts of great quilting tips.